You're listening to Sox in the Basement, a production of the Broadcast Basement Limited, where every show is 30 minutes of good and comes from a basement bar on the south side of Chicago. Pull up a stool, pour a cold one, and join us right now for Sox in the Basement. Heard everywhere podcasts can be found, and always at soxinthebasement.com.
With Chris limping his way through a vacation, it's me, it's Ed, it's James Fox from FutureSox coming in to help out, fill in the gaps from the loss of listening to Chris rant and be angry about stuff. Hopefully he's getting his zen on somewhere else here, and we're going to be able to have some positivity and some lovely thoughts about an awful White Sox team. James, how are you?
Oh, I'm good. Other than like watching big league White Sox baseball, I'm fine.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, it's all relative when it comes to the show because, in the rest of your life, everything can be great. And then if you can finagle the rabbit ears or use the tinfoil or whatever you're doing to watch White Sox games these days, you're treated to the A's blowing them out 8-0 or, just bad looking hitting, bad looking defense on occasion. Pitching that started out that looked great at the beginning, but has been just so up and down, and it's just not a pretty picture right now on the south side, and there's really not much we can do about it, right? I mean, this is what we were led to expect was going to happen, with an off season where Austin Slater's your top free agent acquisition.
Yeah, and they're missing some of the guys who I think are a little bit more important than, like, I do think Austin Slater is the type of guy that serves a role, right? Like he has had a long career of decent success against left-handed pitching, like other than last season. But, I mean, they are missing Mike Tauchman, Brandon Drury, Josh Rojas. Not great players, right? But, just like decent level big leaguers to the point where, you're not forced to play Nick Maton and Jacob Amaya. And who is Joshua Palacios? This is like someone who... I know you guys are fantasy baseball guys, right? Had you ever heard of Joshua Palacios? Because I wasn't really sure who he was, like, before all of a sudden he was on the team.
He's a guy who I think was not good enough to be on the Pirates. So that should tell you something, because they're not exactly a bastion of massive amounts of talent themselves. And yeah, he's one of those guys that I get frustrated with. I get frustrated with the idea that you're going to not just take on other people's cast-offs, which I don't have a problem necessarily. If there's a guy that's got something of a pedigree, if there's a guy that's got something of a good minor league track record, and he comes to you as a minor league free agent or, a non-roster invitee at spring training or something like that, and you go, yeah, maybe a change of pace, maybe our coaches unlock something in his head that wasn't able to be unlocked in Pittsburgh or wherever you came from. But Joshua Palacios is one of those guys that just never showed anything anywhere. He was sort of not a prospect in Pittsburgh after a while, and had an opportunity and failed. And then it's a little like the complaints that Chris and I have constantly had on the show about Miguel Vargas, who has the pedigree from the draft and has the pedigree from what he's been able to accomplish in the minors. But when the White Sox acquired him, he had already shown that he was struggling in the major leagues, and he had had basically a half a season on the Dodgers to show that he had some semblance of life. And here we are again, as you and I are recording, he's hitting 149 with a 449 OPS. And actually Palacios is hitting 182 with a 432 OPS. So I guess if you're going to start Miguel Vargas at third, why not start Josh Palacios in right field every day?
Well, the Vargas thing is kind of puzzling to me too, because like, he ran 400 on base percentages in the minor leagues. Like, yeah, it's, Pacific Coast League stats are, aided a lot of times, but that's usually for like power guys, right? Your big on base guys generally translate. And I think even looking at data and metrics now, Miguel Vargas like makes really good swing decisions. He just doesn't hit the baseball like hard. Like it's very straight. Like, he's up there, he takes pitches, like he does like all these sorts of, and then he just like pops out or whatever. Like he just might not be very good. And I think a lot of us kind of suspected that after seeing him the first time. He's kind of interesting. Him and Andrew Vaughn and some of these other guys, like I'm kind of curious to see like just how long a rope they have, because it does seem like the White Sox are being a little bit more aggressive as far as like if they think a prospect's ready, he's coming up, or they've been quick to cut bait on even guys who they've like this regime has acquired, right? Like it didn't take long for Chris Getz to kind of just not have Dominic Fletcher be a part of things, even though that was one of his acquisitions. So, while it's like a negative that you acquire bad players, I think it's, a positive if you don't let them stand in the way of like actually getting better.
Well, and you mentioned their swing decisions, which is interesting because it's kind of a hallmark of what's been going on with this team, right? There's not too many guys making real bad swing decisions, but like you said, they don't have anything behind it. And when you look, I'm pulling up their exit velocity, and I know exit velocity is it's one of those stats that you can kind of take or leave. But it occurs to me that it's telling that you have the max exit velocity shown on the team this year belongs to Michael Taylor and Matt Thies, and both of those are at 101.5, which isn't exactly, anyone crushing the ball. And then you got Brooks Baldwin is kind of climbing up there at 100.4, and he's right behind Andrew Vaughn, who again, Vaughn is an interesting situation because he's playing terribly again, but some of his StatCast metrics are a little bit better than some of the other guys on the team. But you have some interesting stuff, and you just don't have anybody really stinging the ball. Even the best hard hit percentage on the team is 47.8%, which belongs again to Matt Thies, who's not, he's not a guy that you were intending to build around. He's supposed to be a guy that bridges Kyle Teal and Edgar Caro and Corey Lee into establishing themselves, in Lee's case maybe more, but establishing themselves for the other two as major league catchers. It's unfortunate, but what do you think? Do you think that's good coaching? Like, is Will Venable's staff better and they just need to get better players? Or do you think that this is one of those things where it's like, they're coaching to contact and they're coaching good swing decisions, but maybe they're robbing these guys of the ability to just go up there and let it rip?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. So I think like it is definitely like a Ryan Fuller thing that's like, the swing decisions. I think they've added like the traject machine that everybody's heard about where you can literally plug in like that day's pitcher and like face him basically. Like so I think that sort of thing helps, right? But it's just really hard so you're coaching all these, your heat zones and that sort of thing, and like you're mastering this, but like if you don't put good swings on the baseball, like it's just not going to matter. So that seems to be the disconnect. I think it's more of a player problem than a coaching problem right now, anyways. And we'll see, like as more of the players who matter like start filtering up here. Obviously, Edgar Caro's here now. We have Chase Mydroth doing Chase Mydroth things. He looks pretty much as advertised, right? And then I think Brooks Baldwin looks even a little bit better. Whereas like some of your usual suspects are floundering a little bit. Like I think Lenyn Sosa's had, enough chances at this point, and he's just, hasn't really been very good. And you got the whole Andrew Vaughn thing and Miguel Vargas. So yeah, I think they're just like in an interesting spot. Like when you were talking about Palacios, I think it's kind of the opposite on the pitching side. I think whether it's their pro personnel staff or, some of their coaches, like I think they've, like as far as picking up waiver claims or former prospects or guys like that, like I think they've actually done a pretty good job. Their bullpen is sneaky, like pretty decent, and then Shane Smith is obviously a revelation. This is earlier than
He might be a revolution too.
He might be,
yeah.
We'll see. And then even like a guy like Owen White, who was like a former pretty top prospect high school pick, it's only 25. A couple teams tried to slide him through waivers. He's starting in Charlotte. I mean, he might be one of the next guys up in a rotation role. So I just think the hitting side once again is behind what they're doing on the pitching side, but it's really going to stop your big league team from, not being one of the worst like 2 or 3 teams in baseball this year, probably.
Right. So hopefully the idea behind this then is that Ryan Fuller is getting this done, and he's doing this all through throughout the system, right? And hopefully that this is translating down into the minor leagues so that when guys come up, they're ready to roll. I mean, we saw Edgar Caro come. He's only played one game as you and I are talking, and he did not have the Chase Mydroth start where Mydroth came up and, was like instant offense for them, albeit mostly walks. Caro goes over for the day. Actually, is welcome to the bigs, kid. His first major league plate appearance, he gets plunked, right? So
yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting because you look at somebody like Mike Vassell, who was objectively
that's another one, yeah,
objectively terrible coming into the White Sox system. He's another Rule 5 guy, right? And pitching out of the bullpen. He's got a .75 whip. Hitters are only hitting 122 off of him. His walk to strikeouts, 6 strikeouts, 4 walks. It's not a beautiful ratio, but he's only got 12 innings in, and nobody's touched him. And of course, as I say this, he's going to come out tomorrow, and the Red Sox are going to, just absolutely destroy him. But it's still, you're right. It is telling that they have, they've been able to find some pieces. And Mike Clevenger, thank God he's gone. Let's just say that. I mean,
it's good that they pulled the plug early because there's also guys at Charlotte. Like, I don't know if you saw. So I sent out a tweet, I think last week, about a guy, Addison Coffey. Do you know who that is?
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So Addison Coffey was a 3rd rounder in 2020. That was the crochet draft where it was like the weird 5-round draft, and they paid him like nothing. He was like $50,000 out of like Wabash College, I think. Like, he's a guy that Mike Shirley knew, like a local guy who was playing JUCO ball as a 2-way player. Well, he's moved all the way through their system, and he's a reliever in AAA with like maybe the best changeup in the system, and he's been like awesome, right? So that doesn't mean he's going to be awesome in the big leagues. But even if he makes it to the big leagues, it's like a feather in your scouting team's cap. Like, there's no reason to not see players like this instead of Mike Clevenger, right? Like, even if Addison Coffey gets up to the big leagues and he's nothing, it's like you've turned a 3rd round $50,000 signing like into a big leaguer. I think that's something, that you kind of deserve credit for. Like, why have we not seen it? It's basically, was just something that I was like, they were wasting their time with some guys. But I think that might be changing. I mean, we've seen Justin Anderson get DFA'd recently for other better guys, so it doesn't really seem like they're married to anybody.
If you want to see what's coming up in the world of windows and doors, go to the Window and Door Superstore of Oak Forest. Exterior windows, doors, patio doors, storm doors. If you need it for the outside of your house that opens up and lets you in or lets the air in and out, they got it. No high pressure sales. They're not showing up in your kitchen. They are not wasting your time in your house the way some of the White Sox players are right now. You're out there in their showroom with full examples, glass designs on display, and you don't have to look at pictures in a book. You can just see it in person how it's going to look. Owners are in showroom, and they're always at the site. All Window and Door Superstore installers are from the company. They don't farm out the work. For 40 years, they've been in Oak Forest since 1985. All major brands custom made with no stock items, just for a perfect fit. Check them out a half block east of 159th and Ridgeland at 6280 159th Street, and check them out at windowdooroakforest.com. So who else is a bright spot on this team?
There's a couple other guys I think you didn't mention, like Cam Booser. They look right on that one so far, just because that looks like a power lefty that just developed super late. He's 33. So there's been some bright spots, but it's not going to make anybody feel better when they're going to be like 55 and 107 or whatever it ends up being.
The biggest failing, I thought, of the front office, the old front office, and I haven't seen enough of Chris Getz to really know because his draft picks are still relatively young. They didn't seem to be able to develop guys out of nowhere the way other teams were able to do it. Like it was the 1st round pick or bust. We draft a Chris Sale, we draft a Garrett Crochet, we're going to rush them right to the majors, they're going to have some success. Or we're going to hang our hat and Carson Fulmer is going to be the next big thing. And he's, hung around the majors, but he's never been good per se. And it's the same thing. We've talked about how Oscar Colas, why is he still with the organization? They seem to really dislike him. And once upon a time, he was one of the guys that was going to be one of the saviors of this franchise. So hopefully that this is the hallmark of the Chris Getz era, is guys that develop that, maybe they have a high baseball IQ, maybe they have tools. Not in the Kenny Williams, I can walk in and smell an all-star or see an all-star or whatever. But, maybe they're able to just find guys that develop and can contribute at least in the major leagues. I mean, right?
Yeah, I think it's going to be something that needs to happen going forward. And obviously, like a guy like, I think like Sean Burke and Jonathan Cannon have struggled a bit, right? But those are 3rd round draft picks. I mean, Davis Martin was a 13th round draft pick. Shane Smith was undrafted. You have somebody like Mason Adams, who obviously is down with Tommy John surgery. It was a 13th round pick out of Jacksonville. He would have been in the big leagues pitching this year, right? So I don't think anybody's expecting those guys to be top of the rotation starters. But if you have 4 and 5 starters that cost nothing, it's pretty valuable. I mean, Brooks Baldwin was a day 3 draft pick in round 12. Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right about like Kenny and Rick. It wasn't often. And the other thing they didn't churn the roster during the rebuild phase. It was like, your Adam Engels and these guys just like got the playing time instead of semi-interesting waiver claims. Like, I do kind of like the churn, like how different the 40 man looks like from like week to week and month to month. It's the way that you might find a Mike Vassell, right? Or one of these other guys like that just happens to the light goes on in your organization for some reason. So yeah, I think that part is positive. The other thing with like Chris Getz so far, it does seem like on the offensive side, like a lot of their acquisitions have been similar, even with the prospect additions, where it's guys with patience and the ability to take a walk and like that sort of thing. They're kind of getting away from the profile of just going with corner bats, which is twofold, right? Like you are going to need boppers at some point. Something I've always said is you can't consistently like get outslugged in your own ballpark. And the White Sox aren't expected to win this year, but we just saw Oakland come in and score 24 runs in 3 games and outscore you 23-4 because they're just like hitting the ball over the fence. So yeah, I think it's this is hard. I like the way that it's trending. But they might need to spend on power because at non-premium positions it's not that expensive, right? At some point.
God, the home run situation right now, and I understand we're not that deep into the season, but you've got 4 guys who have 2 of them: Baldwin, Benintendi, who's just coming back, Maton, who I don't remember him
2,
hitting
think,
one
right?
recently, but he's got 2, and then Andrew Vaughn, who again, it's like he's got the 2 home runs, and that seems to be the only thing he's really done. Other than that, Luis Roberts only got 1. Austin Slater hit 1 on opening day. Lenine Sosa hit 1 on opening day. Michael Taylor got 1 out. That's a really low amount of home runs. I mean, that's 10, 12 home runs for the entire team over almost the first month here. And,
I think a third of those are in their wins too.
Yeah. And
like the only times they've won this year is games that they've hit a couple of homers in.
Right, because they can't seem to string together enough hits, which is another shortcoming that this team is having offensively. When you have guys that are hitting 120, 133, the idea that you're going to string together 4 or 5 singles in an inning is, I mean, it's like catching lightning in a bottle. The A's, by comparison, I mean, granted, they have Tyler Soderstrom, who's out hitting everybody.
He's got 9. Yeah, they got a bunch of corner masher types, though. I mean, on that team, you got Lawrence Butler, who comes out of nowhere, and couple other guys.
Yeah, Brent Rooker was an old rookie, and he's got 5 of them for them. Shea Langoliers, it has power. He's not a very high average guy, but he's put about. Even JJ Bleday's got 2, and he was a failed former prospect. Like you said, Butler, Jacob Wilson, who looks really good for them. But you've got, other than the fact that you've got the major league home run leader on there, even if you remove Soderstrom and had those numbers for the White Sox, you figure that they would have won a heck of a lot more games because they're just so poor in the power department. They don't even have that many doubles if you really look at it. It's that level. I mean, Miguel Vargas is leading the team with 4, but at least one of those was a pop-up.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is what happens when I think they were, depending on Brandon Drury and Mike Talkman, have some power, right? Which is just, it's not going to really happen, right? And then you got the whole Luis Robert thing where it's just like, it's been cold. He has no protection. He kind of doesn't always do what they ask him to do. So yeah, I mean, the whole thing is pretty frustrating. I think the pitching has obviously probably been a little bit better than people were expecting, but I mean, you're 4-14 anyway, right? Because they just can't score runs.
Yeah, and their offense is going to be terrible unless they start getting some reinforcements. And like you said, I mean, that Mike Talkman will only take you so far. Benintendi staying healthy would help, but Brandon Drury is a ways away. I mean, he's not going to be back for a while, and I keep forgetting about Josh Rojas. I know you mentioned him earlier, but
yeah. I think he's the furthest away. Like I've heard nothing about him. Brandon Drury's playing in Charlotte right now, so I think we could actually see Brandon Drury whenever if he's playing in Charlotte, he could be playing in Chicago probably. But
that's true.
The Josh Rojas thing was like I had heard from a beat writer last week. Like I made a comment about, oh, we're gonna see Josh Rojas soon, and he said that Josh Rojas, it hurts when he runs with cleats on. So yeah, that's not good. So I don't know how soon we're going to see
broken toe is nothing to mess with. That takes a long time to heal. I can understand that. But Rojas is an interesting guy anyway, because where does he play when he comes in? I mean, do you supplant Chase Mydroth or Brooks Baldwin at this point, or you just make Baldwin a permanent outfielder if Rojas is
there? So I think Rojas, he hits lefty, right? So my guess is he just plays somewhere against right-handed pitching. So I think he could play some third, he could play some second. I mean, honestly, I would play Mydroth at short until they think Montgomery's ready. Even if like you don't think he's going to play there long term, like who cares? Like I just like don't really need to see Jacob Maya like anymore or ever again. I just like don't really know what it does for you, especially like a struggling offense. Like I get having the best defender out there, but I mean when you're this bad offensively, I don't really get it. So yeah, I don't know. I think it'll be like a big mix and match, right? Because I feel like even Drury, second left field, maybe I don't know. I mean, maybe Miguel Vargas does lose playing time in all this because there's some other guys that are better than him that could play the same position he played.
Yeah, and I know Drury got hurt playing first base, but I wouldn't mind seeing Andrew Vaughn take a seat too. I
So
mean,
that's been a big thing on White Sox Twitter, right? Is talking about Tim Elko and like, look, I'm not a huge Tim Elko guy because he's a 27-year-old right first baseman that strikes out 30% of the time in the minor leagues, right? But I do think he understands the assignment. Like he knows that he's a power hitter and that's the job, right? So even if you wanted to see him, I think it would be in place of Andrew Vaughn. Andrew Vaughn has minor league options, Ed. Like I don't know that they'd do it, but they can do it. Like if it got to the point where they were just like, you know what, you're going down. Cause I do think he kind of stops them from taking a look at other guys like Elko specifically. Cause I just think he's like a fixture at first right now, regardless of like how bad he's been.
yeah, I mean, Elko's one of those guys where I feel like he would come up, he'd be, struggling to get, he'd be.
I think it's like first base Daniel Palka.
Yeah, there you go.
Remember Daniel Palka, where it's like, oh my God, we love this guy because it's like 10 homers in a week, but it's going to be 215 with like a bunch of Ks and no defensive value. Like,
yeah, but watching him run into some and putting up the fireworks wouldn't necessarily be bad. And like I said, if you've got Drury, and I didn't realize that Drury was that close to coming back, but if Drury comes up and he's not replacing either Vargas or Vaughn, that's going to be extremely frustrating because both of those guys they're just not contributing all that much. And you kind of wonder why, in Vaughn's case, you wonder why is the team hanging their hat on him in the future? And if he does have minor league options, why don't you send him down to Charlotte and just be like, look, get yourself right. Like show that you can do something. Cause he didn't have any time in the minors really to even show that, like, work on something, become anything, do something well.
I like that plan. Yeah. And I don't know I don't remember your thoughts on it. I was in lockstep with Chris about like, I would have non-tendered him.
100%.
Okay. I just think 5 million for Andrew Vaughn is too much money and it's not my money, but like, what are we doing here? Right. But it locks you into the situation that you have right now. Like if you were like, hey, let's take a look at Tim Elko and see if he's anything, right? He's probably not, but let's find out. Like you can't even do that because Andrew Vaughn's on the team. So yeah, I don't know. I can't say that I didn't see this coming. And I know that like some of the underlying metrics are okay. And what he just, he's just been a really big disappointment. I have a landmine of bad Andrew Vaughn tweets out there from 2017 to 2020 of me, 2018 to 2021 of me talking about how good this guy was going to be. And boy, was I wrong among a whole bunch of others.
I was always of the opinion, like I look at his NCAA numbers and they were, hey, he's a good hitter. And then my frustration was, it goes back to what I said earlier about the old regime and their desire to move their top picks into the majors and have them sort of learn on the job and do this, weird thing where they're going to make it so that they don't really have any time in the minors and they don't have time to hone their craft. I thought they rushed Vaughn up way too quick and just ruined the guy. And now he should be in his prime and he's just a crumbling shell of a Major League Baseball player. And if you were gonna, the only benefit of the doubt I gave Chris Getz in tendering him was if he was able to get himself around 250 and was putting the ball in play a lot and hitting the ball out every once in a while, maybe he had some value to another team. But now I can't imagine anybody. You could probably DFA him and he's not gonna get picked up.
Yeah, that was my thought too. I thought the only reason was hoping that there'd be some Ryan Fuller effect, right? And he'd have like first half like his second half last year, and you could trade him for like an A-baller and get something out of it, right? Now, yeah, I mean, if they DFA'd him now, I don't even think anybody would would pick up the salary. Like you,
I'm not sure
said.
Charlotte would pick him up. They'd be like,
Yeah,
nah,
he
that's
would get
okay.
out. I know he would get outrighted, and that was like the Oscar Colas thing. Like I heard, like they DFA'd him and he cleared waivers, so then they outrighted him and sent him to Birmingham. Because they
Right.
like, I mean, yeah, you could release him outright, but it's like, yeah, you can go help our team in AA, like instead of going to Charlotte. So
I'm talking about the cities of Charlotte and Birmingham. I think they look at Andrew Vaughn and go, no, buddy,
we're not interested. So
So
I mean, as the season moves along and as you're kind of moving guys through, I'm just, really curious to see how they approach, like who they get rid of, once the decisions get a little tougher. Because right now it's going to be easy. It's just going to be DFA Nick Maton, Jake Amaya, Joshua Palacios. Like those guys are very easy to get rid of, right? But it's when you have to start making tougher decisions on guys like Andrew Vaughn. And look, you got two catchers in the minor leagues, and one of them obviously Caro in the big leagues now. Like your catching situation is the least of your problems. Matt Thaiss and Corey Lee were pretty good, like even compared to the rest of the league, and that's where your two prospects are. So like I don't see them dumping Matt Thaiss anytime soon because he's very useful, but like he's clearly not part of their future, and it's not where they need the most help. So they are in kind of a weird spot.
It's time for the Sox Nerd. You know what that means. It's also time to talk about the Village of Lamont, who brings you the Sox Nerd every week. Want to experience a downtown with real history, great eats and drinks, and green spaces filled with adventures? Visit the Village of Lamont. Shop, dine, drink, explore. Check out the website for the latest info, and check it out at visitlamontdowntown.com. Nerd, what do you got?
Guys, allow me to share with you my Edgar Caro journey, won't you? This will give you some insight into how the Sox Nerd makes his sausage, if you will. My journey began with Caro's impending promotion from AAA Charlotte. That allowed me to revisit and update one of my favorite and most long-standing lists, White Sox switch-hitting catchers, of which Caro is now a member. This is a list I began to compile in 1996 when Chad Kruder became the first switch-hitting catcher in 50 years to play for the Sox. Caro is switch-hitting catcher number 14 for the good guys. The most prolific player on this list is Yasmani Grandal. Other familiar names here are Deoner Navarro, Ben Davis, George Dickey, the brother of Yankees Hall of Fame catcher Bill Dickey, and Adrian Nieto. Speaking of Nieto, he was part of the next leg of my journey, big league debuts. Prior to Caro, Nieto was the last Sox catcher to make an MLB debut at home, and that came on April 2nd, 2014. At 22 years, 11 days old, Caro was the youngest catcher to make a debut for the Sox since Ricky Seilheimer broke in at age 19 on July 5th, 1980. The lineup card was the next part of my journey. The lineup revealed Caro was batting 7th and wearing number 7. His spot in the order was the highest by a catcher debuting for the Sox since Joel Skinner, who hit 6th on June 12, 1983. Uniform numbers are a fixation in my world, so much so that I spent a huge chunk of my off-season going over the Sox all-time numerical roster with a fine-tooth comb. Anyway, Caro is the first Sox backstop to wear number 7 since Matt Marullo in 1989. The only other Sox catchers to wear Lucky 7 were Mark the Booter Hill from 1981 to 1986 and Don Pavlich in 1969. Caro capped my journey by getting hit by a pitch in his first big league plate appearance, and that really sent me into a frenzy. He was the first Sox player to do this since Luis Gonzalez on August 18, 2020, and the 5th overall, joining Ray Flaskamper on August 16, 1927, Bill Chunu on October 9, 1910, and Barney Riley on July 2, 1909. It is here where the journey, which consumed most of my workday during the finale of the dismal series against the A's, stopped. That is, for now. Before I get to my zinger, I remind you that gems like these and long-form pieces are on my blog, which you can link to at soxinthebasement.com. My zinger? In honor of the 20th anniversary of the World Champions, I'm going to zing frequently about that team, throwing out some gems you may not know about the 2005 Sox. The Champs actually had a switch-hitting catcher play for them. His name was Raul Casanova, and he appeared in 6 games as a September call-up. He was behind the plate in the White Sox regular season finale and 99th win of 2005 at Cleveland. The most noteworthy thing about Raul's time in the bigs was that he collected the Brewers' final hit at Milwaukee County Stadium on September 28th, 2000. That's it, guys. Probably more than you wanted to know about switch hitting catchers Chad Kruder, Ray Flaskamper, and how the Sox Nerd makes his sausage.
Do you think they changed positions on either Caro or even Corey Lee or Teal? I know Lee's defense is pretty good, but I've heard mixed reviews on Teal and Caro as far as their defensive value.
I don't think so. I think they're both catchers. See, the thing with Teal is like he's athletic enough to move, but I think like his highest upside as a player is as a catcher, because I think his bat really plays like above average as a catcher, where like, yeah, you could put him in left or play him somewhere, but like I don't think his bat is above average at like another spot. That's why I think he's valuable there. I do think they were going to have both of them catch and DH in the minors rather than like having one of them play first or something. Obviously if they're, they turn into your two best players in the big leagues or something, it's like a good problem to have. And you probably have to carry a third catcher then so you can DH one of them, right? But now I think they'll worry about that later. Teal has kind of cooled off and struggled a bit at Charlotte, and he wasn't good in AAA last year. So I do think it's going to be a little bit more time. Carroll coming up makes sense because he's young, but he's really hit everywhere. There was really nothing else to prove. But I will be interested to see like when Corey Lee's ready to return, like, what do you do, right? Is that the end of Matt Thaiss? Like, do you trade him somewhere? Do you send Caro back down? That's like the next like short term, I think, part of this.
Well, and I had read with Caro coming up that the Sox missed out on the that there's that rookie
the prospect incentive thing.
Yeah, the prospect incentive. If they were looking for that and they were looking for that opportunity, I don't feel like Chris Getz is that incompetent that he wouldn't know about it and wouldn't have taken advantage.
Yeah, you would think they'd bring him up sooner to like take a run at Rookie of the Year, right? Like, I don't know the reasoning for Caro coming up, really. I mean, is he getting catcher the majority of the days for the rest of the year? Like, are they gonna trade Corey Lee? Are they gonna go with Caro and Lee? Like, I don't know. I don't think it's a scenario where they like rushed Caro. Like, I think he deserves to come up, but I wasn't expecting it by any means. Something interesting. So Edgar Caro's agent or somebody from his agency reached out to us last week wanting us to interview him on the Future Sox podcast. And Ian and Elijah interviewed him Monday night. And usually when this sort of thing happens, it's like the agency kind of knows like the guy's getting close to the big leagues and they want it out there. And then I think that was Monday. And then Wednesday, we found out he was going to the big league. So I was like, oh, that's funny. Like that's not a huge surprise.
No, we were both happy to see him come up. Chris and I were but I would hope that with Caro, you're not just gonna see him be a flash in the pan and as far as the time that he's got here and he's only getting a cup of coffee, that they're actually gonna let him try and do something up here, because it's just there's so many players in front of him that are just not contributing in any way, shape, or form. But if you want to see what's coming, in the future, and you want to start building around your future guys, Caro seemed to me to be the top guy to do it. Tim Elko's nearly 40% strikeout rate notwithstanding.
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't know how far away Corey Lee is. I'm curious to see if they just go with Lee and Caro, and then because look, Matt Thaiss can help somebody. I mean, you could easily trade him for something. I just don't know how essential they feel like he is on this team, at least in the first half.
That's an interesting thing too. Is that for the first time this year, we're really looking at maybe there's a piece that is playing well enough that they can actually trade off and start building, for down the road.
Sox in the basement. Sox in the basement. Sox in the basement.
Sox in the Basement. Heard everywhere podcasts can be found, and always on soxinthebasement.com.